Hello, it's Bailey, and I'm currently reading The Duke and I by Julia Quinn, but that's November's news. I'm here today to bring you my October wrap-up. I'm very happy to bring this to you because I had a very good reading month in October. I read 13 books, which ended up being about 4,800 pages and 82 hours. I did film a mid-month wrap-up, which I will leave in the cards of this video. If you haven't watched that yet, please do, because the books that I already mentioned in that wrap-up I'm not going to talk about at all other than to state what I rated them. But I am going to do this in my usual format and go from my least favorite book to my most favorite book of the month. So my least favorite book of the month, which I luckily already talked about in my mid-month wrap-up, was The Secret History by Donna Tartt. And luckily I don't own this book and I rated it 1.5 stars. Next, I have at 2.5 stars, Big Girl by Kelsey Miller. And this is a memoir about a girl who writes for Refinery 29. And basically she has an intuitive eating column. But I rated this so low because I really don't know who this is marketed for. I don't think it's marketed for who it should be intended to. And I think this could end up in the wrong hands in terms of this book deals with a lot of her traumas, and just the pitch of this, it's called Big Girl, How I Gave Up Dieting and Got a Life. I think this would attract the wrong crowd that would be more detrimental than helpful. But it wasn't bad. I enjoyed the story. Then at 3 stars, I have a reread. I reread A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas, which I have read the first 2 in this series. So I went back into this in hopes of continuing reading, everything that's out so far. And I gave this 3 stars last time I read it, and I stuck with a 3-star rating. Again, I love her writing style, but this is a pretty weak start to a series. But I already in my mind know that it gets better in the next book. This book I'm struggling to describe, but it's basically a fantasy book about a girl who kills a fae, and then there's basically a prophecy that if she does that, she has to go live with the fae, even though she's basically been told not to eat their food, not to trust them. But yeah, and then it's basically her learning that maybe these people aren't so bad. That was a really weak description of that book, but I always struggle to explain fantasy. Then at 3.25 stars, I have The Boyfriend Project by Farah Rochan. And at 3.75 stars, I have The Moon and More by Sarah Dessen, which was another one of my rereads. And I had fonder memories of this than what it actually delivered, but I still did really enjoy it. It is about a girl who is in her final summer before she goes off to college, and she starts the book with a boyfriend, and it's kind of about deciding, do you stay together before college? Do you break up? What should couples do? There's a couple side characters in this too that I thought were really good but are struggling with the same thing. And basically her and her current boyfriend decide to not stay together, and she ends up kind of having a summer fling. I have 3 books at 4 stars, which were Red, White, and Royal Blue. 3 Women by Lisa Tadeo, which is a nonfiction book, and our author Lisa Tadeo followed these 3 women through quite a few years of their lives, and this book is centering around desire, but all 3 of these women are in very difficult phases of life and relationships. One of the women had a relationship with a teacher while she was in high school. One of the women is going through a separation with her husband and is rekindling a romance from many years ago. And the third is a woman who is married, and her husband own a business and they're swingers. So this was very interesting. It is a very explicit book. It is going into these women's sex lives, but it was really interesting and I liked the writing style. And I also have Felix Ever After by Case and Calendar at 4 stars, which I really enjoyed that book. The only reason that isn't a 5-star book for me is it did just feel a little too, the plot felt a little too easy and juvenile, which it is a YA book, but I still think it was, the plot was just driven a little too easy, but it was super cute as well. And this is about a young transgender boy who is actually like kind of questioning his identity, and it has a lot to do of just like putting labels on yourself and also like just finding love when you're not even sure how you identify. And yeah, it's really hyped on BookTube. It got me, and overall it was a really good read. Then at 4.25 stars, I had a reread, which was The Fifth Wave by Rick Yancey. And I had 4 5-star books this month, which were The Right Swipe by Alicia Rye, The Giver by Lois Lowry, which was a reread. Again, I have reread this quite a few times. I love this story, and this is about our main character Jonas, and we are in this utopian society where everything is basically like rules are set for you. Everyone follows this formula. It's kind of bland just because everything's perfect, but nothing, you know, goes against the grain. And when you go into your 12th year, you're supposed to get your job assignment, and Jonas gets a odd job assignment, and it's basically for him to learn everything bad in the world that this society has done away with, and he is going to learn all of that information and have to be like the keeper of that information, and the giver is the person who is teaching it to him. He's basically giving him the memories. I love that book every time. I read it for the first time I think in 8th grade, and I had an amazing teacher who taught it to me, and like I said, I have read that book over and over again. And it's super short, so it was fast. I read it in like a couple hours. Then I have what is probably actually the most surprising 5-star I gave this month, because this is a book I picked up completely on a whim because I had heard this author talked about on a lot of like true crime podcasts that I talk about, and I picked up, and it's actually the second in a series, but there's no reason these need to be read in order. It was You Belong to Me by Anne Rule, and this is volume 2 in her Crime Files series, but these are basically true crime stories being recounted to you. Anne Rule was a like crime reporter, and this was really good. I really love true crime, so this is right up my alley. If you don't love true crime like shows or podcasts, like I watch Investigation Discovery, I could watch it for hours. So yeah, I really loved this, but the main story in this, which takes up most of this book, was about a man who killed a woman basically because she reminded him of his wife who was separating from him. But yeah, there's a lot to that story. And then there was 5 other like shorter stories at the end. And overall, I thought it was super, super good. I gave it 5 stars and put it ahead of a lot of other books here. And my favorite book of the month, I actually did talk about in my first half of this, but I will rave about it again. I read The Absolutely True Diary of a Part-Time Indian by Sherman Alexie, which this was a reread for me, but I absolutely love this book. If you haven't read it, you should. And if you haven't seen me talk about it, you should go to my mid-month wrap-up, watch it, and hear me talk about what this is about and why I love it so much. But yeah, that concludes my month. It was a super good reading month. I have a lot in store for November, so I am excited to move on, go on to the next things. I feel like I haven't gotten a lot of new things in my system lately because I did reread so many books in October. So I'm just really, really anticipating my November TBR, which if you also haven't watched, I will leave that in the cards as well as in the description. But thanks so much for listening to me talk about everything I read this month. I hope to see you again soon. Bye!